everyone, Sandy here. Welcome back to my channel and to part 2 of my junk journal tutorial where I'm creating a junk journal with Country Craft Creations new hybrid junk journal collection called Petals and Letters. And tutorial 1, I showed you how to make the cover and stack your pages and then also stitch them into the book, and then a few other things. And so this one we're going to start decorating. And I'm splitting up the tutorials into smaller sections. So this one is for the inside, front, and back cover. So stay tuned and we'll get started on it right away. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is work here on this inside front cover. And I took one of these sheets and cut it in half at 5.5, and then I trimmed this down to 5 1/4 wide by 7 3/4 tall, and that's going to go right here, so it'll have a pink border around it. I thought that would just, make it pop out, but I decided I want to make a pocket out of it. So I've got my mat here and I have my gyro pin, and I think right here at the corner of right above the bow and starting at that lace, I'm going to trace around this bow here, kind of free this up to make an insert pocket here. So let me turn this and then we'll just follow along. We're not actually cutting anything away, we're just making an opening here. Okay, so we got that. So we have that bow like that. And then we put this cap back on. Okay, so now we need to ink. And so I've decided I do want the darker color, so I'm using Catherine Pooler's Spiced that you can get from Country Craft Creations if you don't have an ink to use on your junk journal. So I like a kind of a sepia brown color, and the spice works really good. So I'm just going to ink around all the edges. Get quite a bit of ink here on there. And I think I'm going to ink here where I cut some here so we can see the section. So I like inking because it just brings in a lot of detail on the edges here. This one side here, and also gets rid of the white core if there's any, from cutting the paper or the way the paper is made. So let's see here, a little more right here. Okay, so now we're ready to glue that on. And you can see here on my table, I do have all kinds of bits and pieces. I did cut out some more elements and things. I have my bowl of laces and stuff here. Of course, I may add to that. So we don't put any glue on this where the bow part is. So we can glue down this section here. If I can get my glue going. Sorry about that. Get up some. This is art glitter glue that I'm using. There we go. Okay, around the edges of the top part. And then I'm going to make this go in. So nothing on this part down here except the outer edge to hold it onto the page. So we're leaving this bottom part unglued. And then I'm going to kind of center it, sort of. So we have the pink showing and the burgundy. I think that's really pretty like that. And then we have this pocket here. So I'm going to lift this up, the bow up, and then burnish that. Make sure all that lays down underneath there. So that created a pocket. Okay, let's find maybe a tag that I cut out from the collection. That's kind of pretty. So I'm going to ink that, and then I have to add something to the top of it. So I want to ink all the edges of this. Now these are white on the back, and if you don't like that, just do some inking to, you know, kind of make them look vintage on that white part. It's easier to lay it down. Okay, so that finishes it off. So this will go in here, and I just need to add something to the top, like probably some of the twine. So let me get my hole punch. Okay, here's the smallest one, and just punch that where that hole should be. Okay, and then I'm going to take a little bit of twine here that I have and cut off a bit of it. Just going to thread it in there. Tie a knot. Double knot. And then instead of a bow, I'm just going to bring it up and tie a knot up in here. Okay, so there we have, I'll make the tails a little even here. So we just have that for now, and we're going to just tuck that inside there like that, so that looks good for now. Of course, we add some more stuff. It's too small. I like that one in there. So I want to ink the edges of this is another tag just from the collection that I fussy cut out. And on that one, I think it would probably like a button or something on there. I think a button would be pretty. So let me grab one of my vintage buttons for that. Okay, in my bowl of doodads here, I had this little bag of buttons left over from a project or from a project kit. They're not vintage, they're new buttons, but I think they'll work just fine. So I'm just going to dump those out right there and find one that I like and glue it to this little tag right here. So you could do some journaling on that. Of course, you can do journaling back here on this section. You could actually put a photo if you wanted to. So just all that tucks in like that. So I like how that looks for in there. And now we're ready to do, I think I'm going to add this lace here on the edge. Let's see here. Cut the end off a little bit. There to here. There, a little bit more. And I'm going to grab some score tape. Put that down right here. And then I'll also use glue because I want to make sure it stays. So I put some glue on each side of it. Sometimes I just use glue only on my laces and trims. So let's see here. Kind of scoot it over a little bit. Right along the edge. There we go. Press that in. So this was just a piece that I had left. I think it's really pretty there. A tiny little bit of it here. I may want to put that somewhere else. I don't know. It's kind of pretty. I've got an idea for that. Hang on just a second. So I had this little piece of this matching lace, and I took a snippet of this ribbon here, and I'm just going to fold it like that. I'm going to put that lace on top, and I have a safety pin, so I'm going to see if I can work it through and make a little decorative embellishment out of some lace and ribbon. So I've got it through, I just need it to come back. Oops, pulled it out. Okay, so I've got it in there, so I may have to use glue underneath. So I'll close it up. So I'll put glue here on this part. It was easier to just not go through the whole thing. Okay, so we can always open that up and add a charm if I wanted to, and I think I'm going to glue this up here in the corner like that, and just let that dry. I take a clip if you have to, but usually the art glitter glue will grab and let that dry like that. So that's just an extra decorative piece that matches that. Got the pretty colors here. We've done the pocket on the inside front cover. I added this lace. Really, it was quite simple to make. Just cut that piece, a slot there, and then you can stick in whatever you want. So since we did this, I thought we'd go ahead before we start doing pockets on the pages, skip over and do our inside back cover. And another thing, I know you see the big gap here on between the pages and the covers, and that's fine because I'm going to be putting wrapping ribbon around that and tying it on the outside. So for here on the inside back cover, I thought that I would put an pocket, an accordion type pocket with a flap cover top that attaches down for storage of extra things. So I decided I wanted it to be a little smaller on the sides and then fit along the bottom here. So I've cut me a piece from the parchment paper that is 6 by 8. Okay, so now we do need a scoreboard. When you make one of these, you're going to need a scoreboard. So let me grab mine. So the short part is going to be the height. So this is going to be our sides. So we need to score at a 1/2 inch, 1, 1 1/2. Turn it to your 6-inch side and score just a 1/2 inch. Turn all the way around and again repeat the 1/2 inch, 1 inch. Get this one a little better here. And 1 1/2. Okay, so that's all the scoring you need. So we're going to take our scissors, and these 3 little corners on the side, we're going to cut those out. I'm going to cut at an angle right here up to the intersection, and then all of them out like that. Up to the intersection, and then cut all the little squares out. So now we have a piece like that for our pocket. And it's going to be an accordion expandable pocket. So now I'm going to burnish my score lines. So this bottom one comes up. This is the front side with this one folded under. So the first one folds under, the next one folds up, and the next one folds back. And that's the accordion look. So you see how you have valley, mountain, and then this one goes down. Same here. Fold this one back. Then the next one comes towards you. You can burnish that if you want. And the next one goes backwards. So just like that, we have an accordion pocket. Now I want a notch in this one, so I've got my notch punch. I'm going to line this up. I'm going to eyeball it where it's kind of even. Okay, punch. Just like that, we have a notch now. Okay, so now we're ready to put it in the book. Got to clean up just a little bit here on the bottom. I don't like that sticking out. Okay, so grab the book and see how it's going to fit in away from the edge of the pink so you can continue seeing the pink. So I'm going to make it about right there. So the glue is going to go, and I left my glue bottle open, so hang on while I get that going. Okay, so I've got the glue going, so I'll put glue along the bottom, 1/2 inch, right up to underneath there, and then both 1/2 inches here on the sides. Okay, so this is just something similar you would do in a regular album, but you can do this for your junk journals too. So I'm going to position this where I want it, kind of eyeballing it side to side and across the bottom, and then I'm going to burnish it really well and get it like that. Of course, we're going to be adding pattern paper to it, but you can see how you've got that little accordion there, and that gives you room to put in thicker things, lots of photos, documents, letters, whatever you want to put inside there. Just make sure it's stuck down good. Now I want a closure piece that comes over it, so let me get the measurements on that, and I'm going to make it also out of the parchment. To make our flap, cut a piece out of a scrap of the parchment paper, and width is just a little over 4 7/8, and then the height is at 4. We're going to score our 4-inch side at a 1/2 inch and at, let's make it 3/4 to give us a gusset. Now I tried something else and I didn't like how it looked, so I took it off. And you're going to see where I had some stuff glued on there. There's no point in showing you what I did because it didn't work. So for this flap, I want to round the 2 corners. So do that. Okay, just like that. And now all we have to do is glue this 1/2 inch, and then when we stand it up, we have a 3/4 inch space there. So I'm going to open this up. You'll see where I had something glued there as a flap. I was trying to what would look like an accordion type, but it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, so I took it off. Whoops. Okay, so this is going to glue down right here. So I'll put the glue on the 1/2 inch. To cover up that space where I kind of goofed it up, and we burnish it down. We make sure it lines up here side to side. Give it a good burnish, and this will add some patterned paper inside. So we're going to do that next. We're going to do our patterned paper that I want to use to hide this, and then we'll make our string closure for our pocket. So that's going to be next. I've got a place there where that's pulling out, don't like. Okay, so we'll work on that. We'll work on this part next, and then I'm going to put some tape on there to seal that up, where it's kind of like pulling out right there. It's not pulling out, it's just got a tear there. So I am going to be putting ribbon on there. So I think I'm just going to put a piece of paper on that, just to kind of hide that and reinforce it. So anywhere you have a flaw, you can put a piece of paper that's like pieced together. It really doesn't hurt the looks of it any. You can take your ink and kind of ink that spot. There we go, because it just looks like part of the other blended in. It's okay. All right, so now let me look at my pattern papers that I want to use on this, and we'll get that covered, and then put our closure on there, our string wrap piece on there. Okay, so I've cut my papers for my pocket here. So here on the bottom, I chose the lined one, and I notched it. So I cut it out to give me a margin of about 1/4 inch all the way around. So my piece is 4.5 by 5. And I'm going to find my glue and glue that on. So hang on just a second. I've lost my glue. I know it's here somewhere. I was beginning to think I had totally taken my glue bottle out in the trash, but I found it hiding behind some lace and stuff. So I'm going to glue this down. I did ink the edges with the spiced. So this is going to go right about here. Okay, burnish that down. So that gives us a place to journal if we want to. On the inside, I'm going to use the opposite side. So I cut that down to 4 3/4 wide by 4.5 tall to slip down in there like that. And I'm going to glue that in. So I want the solid side of this piece. Going to make sure it goes in the back behind the folds. So I'm lifting it up to see, make sure that I get it down in there where it belongs. There we go. And then slide it down to just below. And I'm bringing it up higher so that there's not as much of this parchment showing here. There we go. Kind of center it. Okay. And you notice that I didn't cut it to go all the way down. You can if you want to, but you can't really see once you look down in there. So for the front here, I want this rose piece here. And so this is cut at 4.5 wide by 3 3/4 tall. 2 3/4 tall. Rounded the corners and inked the edges. I love the red rose for some reason. So I'm going to put that on there. Right here. And I'm leaving quite a bit of the parliament showing. Okay. Like that. And then the back side, you can either do that or the journaling. I think I'll do the journaling lines. So it's the same size as the one on the front, and around at the top 2 corners. So there we go. Okay, now we're ready to put a closure on that. And I'm going to use the buttons. So I need a lift to wrap the string around. So I am going to put glue on the back of my button and add a small button like that. Whoop. And I'm going to have to let that dry. Center that. Do the same on this one. Put this on the inside. And we're going to wait and let that dry, and then they will actually glue down onto this. So I can go ahead and glue those on. I do want to make sure this stays lined up. So I'm just going to clip the side here. Okay. So we put one here. So I'm going to put glue right about here in the center. Turn this over and put the small button down into the glue. And then one opposite, probably about right here. Kind of line it up. And we definitely will have to let these dry before I attach any string. So like that. So we got those attached, so I'm going to let those dry, and then I'll come back and show you adding the string for the closure. Okay, so I'll let the buttons dry, and you know me, when I'm waiting for something to dry, I just have to play around. So I decided I wanted to fancy up these buttons, and I found these two vintage gold buttons with the black. I just think they're perfect with this paper. They had a shank on the back, so I use this kind of, I don't know what this is called, tool. I think I got it from my husband, or he bought it for me, and I just cut the shanks off. They were plastic. You can also do it with metal ones, and then I glued that on and let those dry too. So I think I'm ready to add a tie string. Now I really like this green one, but it may be it's too thick. We need the thinner kind. So let's see what this one does. This one's thicker than the regular jute. It's kind of a burlap twine. Now what I do is I tie it on the bottom. So I hope I'm not going to pull my button loose. So tighten a knot like this. Gently. Okay. And then I tie a knot to secure it. Of course, I'm going backwards here from what I normally tie, but get that knot going. Yeah, it's going to pull that loose. That's not going to work, guys. Too thick. Let me cut that off, because it took my button right off. The top button off, and it should have stuck. Glue is still wet. So this is where you might want to use hot glue. I'm just stubborn about getting it out. And I'm using art glitter glue. That usually works pretty good. So I guess it was just as well that I found out now that it wasn't glued on good. So I'm going to position it back on and hope that it catches. So I don't want to sit and wait. So this is jute twine. I had some more in here, already open. Okay. And you can see what I was doing. I was tying it around that little button that's underneath. Tied into a knot. So I want to go ahead and get this on so I don't have to wait another hour or two to get this finished so I can move on. But so I'll pull, gently pull. It's catching on that smaller button that's underneath, wrapped around it. Okay, another knot just to be sure. So I did tie a loop and 2 knots. Okay, so once you tie your knot, you've got this piece here, snip it off really close under there so you can't see it. Now then, to secure this, you're going to wrap up and around the top button and around the bottom and around and I think one more. Okay, now down here I'll bring it down and I'm going to cut this and tie a knot. Sometimes I do double strings, but this one I'm just going to do the single. So tie a knot so that doesn't ravel out. Tie a couple of knots if you can. Like that, so it's thicker. And then go ahead and trim that off, and then it can fray up to that knot. And then we just pull this to secure. And that will keep our pocket closed. So I'm going to let this one dry, fingers crossed that it does. Otherwise, I will get my hot glue gun out, or I'll find some E6000 or something to glue that. So that is our back cover pocket. Oh, I love how it looks with that gold on there. Really, really love it. Now you can also do the same thing with the brads, but you would do that before you put your pattern paper down. You could secure something with brads and have a lift and wrap around. I've had luck with gluing buttons before, and once they're given like overnight to set, they seem to work just fine. And with this extra space here, we have room for something like that in our book. Okay, so I really like that. I love how it turned out with these papers, and now I'm ready to kind of clean up a little bit because I'm always so messy. Oh, another thing I did while these were dried is I glued this piece that I cut out of our element sheet, our ephemera sheet. This is a little trunk with the letters, you know, a box, a letter box in there. And then I cut out one of the little sayings from this sheet here. It says love letters, and I glued that on. So I forgot to tell you that I added that on there. So that just really, really makes that pocket back there. And we've got, it's expandable and it is ready to fill. I'm not going to put anything in it right now. But you can, you know, add, like I said, letters, things, love letters, add your love letters. So, okay, so I'm going to clean up and then we'll start adding in pockets. I've already got some here in places where I think I want to put them like that. And so I'm going to just, you know, gather all that up and we'll be ready to work on that. So we'll be doing that next.